Welcome to this week's episode of the Mid-City Church Sermoncast. My name is Fernie, and I'm so glad that you're joining us as we continue this series on stepping into the wilderness as we look at Moses to Joshua. So I hope you're ready, because here we go. I honestly do not remember how old I was, but when I was really young, my dad and his friends all decided to put their kids into the same t-ball team. Now, looking back, I think it was probably because they could drop us off and then they could hang out. But aside from that, I don't really know or remember much from that season. I don't remember if we had a winning season. I don't remember how many games we played. I don't remember who our coach was. I don't even remember when we played or where we played. There's only one thing that I remember vividly. So at one of our games, for some reason, I think it was our last, it was the bottom of the ninth, and the other team was at bat. Now, the kid hit the ball, and it went straight into right field to one of our players named Julio. Now, put a pin in that, because I want to give you some more context. So at the time, my dad was the athletic director at a high school in El Paso, Texas, and his friends, everybody that was all his friends with him, worked at the school. And they were all, one of them was a volleyball coach, one of them was a soccer coach, one of them was a basketball coach. Like, they were all some sort of coach, and they were all in athletics in one way, shape, or another. Now, to be fair to them, they probably knew more about coaching than our coach himself, but they were the kind of parents who would shout from the stands and tell us what to do and tell us how to play better. So here's what happens. The ball gets hit straight into right field, straight to our teammate Julio. And I remember thinking that if he caught it, we would win the game. And unfortunately, Julio didn't make the catch. The ball just went over him, and the other team scored, and we ended up losing that game. Now, here's the memorable part. As we were all making our way back to our parents, Julio's dad very loudly said, "We lost because of you, Julio. You should have caught that." Now, just a couple of moments after that, my parents and I were getting in their car, and I too said, it was all Julio's fault that we lost. He should have made that catch. Now, it was that day that my dad gave me one of the best life lessons ever. Of course, first I got in trouble for saying that. But then he reminded me that it was unfair to put all of the blame on Julio. The reality was that almost every single one of us had made a mistake during the game. And so Julio didn't cause us to lose. It was a series of mistakes that caused us to lose. We lost because mistakes were made by all of us, not just Julio on that last play. Now, I'll take it a step further and say this. No matter what you do or how careful you are, the reality is that mistakes will be made. The real test, in my opinion, is not whether or not mistakes will be made. The real test is what you do when mistakes are made. So let me explain. Exodus chapter 32, verses 15 through 25 say this. Moses then turned around and came down the mountain. He carried 2 covenant tablets in his hands. The tablets were written on both sides, front and back. The tablets were God's own work. What was written there was God's own writing inscribed on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "It sounds like a war in the camp." But Moses said, "It isn't the sound of a victory song. It isn't the sound of a song of defeat. The sound of party songs is what I hear." When he got near the camp and saw the bull calf and the dancing, Moses was furious. He hurled the tablets down and shattered them in pieces at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made and burned it in a fire. Then he ground it down to crushed powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Now, Moses said to Aaron, "What did these people do to you that you led them to commit such a terrible sin?" Aaron replied, "Don't get angry with me, sir. You know yourself that these people are out of control. They said to me, 'Make us gods who can lead us.' As for this man Moses who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we don't have a clue what has happened to him. So I said to them, 'Whoever has gold, take it off.' So they gave it to me. I threw it in the fire, and out came this bull calf." Now, Moses saw that the people were out of control because Aaron had let them get out of control, making them an easy target for their enemies. Now, I don't know if you caught it or not, but lots of mistakes were made in this story. For starters, the Israelites made the mistake of losing hope that Moses was ever coming back. So because of that, they had this golden calf made and they began to worship it. In the same vein, Aaron made a mistake when he caved and gave in to the people. Moses probably made a mistake by taking way too long up on the mountain. He could have also mentored Aaron better, or you can't help but wonder what would have happened if Moses hadn't taken Joshua up the mountain with him. No matter what way you look at it, a lot of mistakes were made in this story. Now, here's what I find most interesting. Just a couple of chapters later, in chapter 34, Moses once again goes up the mountain. But this time, none of the mistakes that we talk about in chapter 32 were made were made or repeated in the second one. See, that's the thing about mistakes. When mistakes happen, it's not just one person or one mistake that is at fault. Usually it's a series of mistakes, one after another, that leads to a bad situation. And it's in those instances that we must be careful and intentional about taking a look at the situation from a bird's eye view to understand all the things that went wrong. And also to figure out a way to fix the situation and ensure that these things never happen again. See, I believe that the goal is not to avoid mistakes altogether, because I think no matter how hard we try, mistakes will be made. The goal is to learn from them so that we can better ourselves the next time around. Now, to give you some examples of how that's been true here at Mid-City Church, I want to welcome once again my coworker and friend, Katie, to talk about some of the mistakes that we've made along the way and what we've learned from them. So, Katie, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row.
It's a record.
Yeah, it is. So, I know we've been talking about this for a while, but what are some of the mistakes that you think, as you look back, some of the mistakes that we've made and what we've learned from them?
So one thing I think leading up to March 15th, 2020, we had plans to look more like what you would think when you think of a church. We were going to worship every Sunday. We had space picked out in a school gymnasium. And so I think as bad as COVID was and as much as we were forced to pivot because of the pandemic, I think one good thing that came out of that was that we found a more creative way to do church. If people want to go to church every Sunday, there are tons of options for that. But I think our rhythm at Mid-City is more modern and really fits into people's lifestyles better. And I think we were set up to make a mistake with worshiping every Sunday, but we were able to pivot away from that due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I keep thinking back on that, and I've wondered what would have happened if we had done that. So, honestly, this is my own assessment, and I hope it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. I really do think that Mid-City would not be around today if we had launched March 15th the way we had hoped to launch. I think looking back now, our goals were completely upside down. So in some ways, I don't think I'll say this for a fact. God didn't give us the pandemic so we would avoid that mistake. But I'm grateful that happened, that COVID happened, because it really did force us to reevaluate everything. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I have another one. If
Okay.
you want to hear another example. Okay, so the other one I wanted to share is more of a personal example, and I think what it is that as a fairly type A person and someone who's fairly focused on as close to perfectionism as things can be, I think that I have a tendency, and I hope that I've gotten better at this throughout the years, but I, at least at first, had a tendency to want to do everything myself and not share responsibility with lay people, leaders in the church. And I think that is a big mistake, not only because obviously I can't do everything myself and you can't do everything yourself, but you're really, I was taking away from opportunities for people in our church to serve and to lead in different ministry areas. Mm-hmm. So that has been something that I've learned and a mistake that I made throughout our time at Mid-City.
Yeah. To be fair, I think we all made that mistake. I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and I remember when we first started, we had 3 small groups that first year, and all 3 were staff led, on top of everything else we were already doing. And not only did we take an opportunity away from people, but I think we also didn't bring our full selves to our small groups at first, because we were so focused on other things and we were so exhausted and COVID. Yeah, but I think on like what's happening right now, where our core team has really stepped up, and some of our volunteers who are finding volunteers to step in, and it's been really incredible to see everybody stepping up to do stuff, and how less tired I am after a large group gathering, because many hands are helping, and it's a lot faster and easier and more fun, and yeah. So that's a good example too. So I'll tell you my example. So like everybody else, COVID hit, we started doing online, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but I think we did online worship a little too long. So I don't know if you remember this, but Easter of 2020, our attendance numbers online just like tanked. And as I've talked to other pastors, online attendance really started going down after Easter. I think people really started getting tired of sitting on a couch and, I hate to say it this way, pretending to worship, because you don't really sing the songs. You don't get as into it. Some people do. For the most part, I think people struggled with that. But we kept going online past that. And for most of 21, we did online worship too. I felt like if we were going to be a quote unquote real church, we needed to have online worship because everybody else had online worship, and that our main campus online worship is important. And we try to do it at a really high level. And so in my mind, the day we stopped doing online worship is just going to be the demise of Mid-City.
Right.
People would stop taking us seriously. But then we got to a point where, at least for me, I was just exhausted of doing online worship. Especially you and I, we were having to do 2 online services at the time. And we had Jason on the team, and he was doing editing, and you were doing editing, and I tried to avoid doing editing because I was trying to do other stuff. And I kept feeling in my spirit like we need to do something different. But I didn't allow myself to let us go there because I was afraid to not be seen as a real church.
Right.
What I learned from that, once I finally got out of the way, we started doing the sermon cast, and we've been doing now. This is the 3rd season, so 3 years now, and I hear people so often talk about the things they've learned, the things they've wrestled with, the conversations happening in small group, all things that I wanted online worship to do, but that it wasn't doing. And I wonder to this day, what would have happened if I had been willing to get out of the way earlier and started doing the sermon cast, or thinking like what could be next way before. And maybe our small groups would be further along, and maybe we wouldn't have been as exhausted as we were back then. And obviously, like, what if, right? It's not going to change anything. But I do look back and I think about how much in the way I got during that season. Yeah.
Speaking of us being in the way of things, online worship started a literal fire. And so
in this room,
if everyone wants to hear that story, I'm happy to tell you a different time. But so far, the podcast has started no fires.
Yep.
So I think that is a pretty good sign to continue with the sermon cast.
I agree. For those of you that don't know, I'll just say it really quickly.
Okay.
We were recording a Christmas service, and we bought some stuff at a store that will remain unnamed, and it caught fire because we thought it could hold candles, right? So I remember being I was at camp, and all of a sudden I got a call from Katie, your office is on fire. So we can give you more details.
I'm going to put a picture of the object over this video. So take a look. Here's
Perfect.
what caught on fire.
So here's what I want people to take away from this conversation. And you tell me if you want to add some more. As I look back on everything that we've done in Mid-City since really the fall of 2019, mistakes have been made. I think we can sit here and talk for hours, maybe even days, about all the mistakes that we've made. And I think mistakes sometimes are just inevitable, right? Mistakes just happen. I think about the scripture that I just read earlier, and Like, nobody did those mistakes on purpose. Mistakes just happen sometimes. And sometimes stress makes you make mistakes. And sometimes you're not prepared enough, so you make mistakes. Like, mistakes just happen. My prayer for all of us is that as we move into this new season of ministry, that we may be willing to continue to try and experiment with things. I think one of the things that I pride myself in is that we have experimented as probably more than most churches. We could have done more if I had gotten out of the way, like I said earlier. But I hope that we can continue to experiment and keep trying things, because even the mistakes that are made during that don't go to waste. Like, they really teach us a lot and help us a lot. And I think just like the second time Moses goes up to the mountain, the same mistakes weren't made. I think it's also possible for the church to keep moving forward, to try things again or try new things and learn from the mistakes and really continue to bring about heaven on earth. So, yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
I think it's important to, as a creative congregation, a creative church, it's important to have that freedom to fail at certain things. So when we make mistakes, we can learn from it and know, like, this didn't work. Let's try something else. That's okay that it didn't work. And I'm grateful for all the mistakes that were made along the way because of how Mid-City is today.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that I tried to tell one of our team members, or have tried to tell one of our team members, is it's okay to fail. So as we move forward, it's okay to fail. God is big enough to overcome our mistakes. And in that willingness, we will learn and grow, and something that we can't even imagine can happen, just like you said, like Mid-City is right now. Yeah. Well, like we end every sermon cast, I pray that this may be so today, tomorrow, and every day. Amen.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mid-City Church Sermon Cast. If you would like to dive deeper into today's topic, visit midcity.church/sermoncast to find a home sheet that goes along with this message. On the home sheet, you will find scriptures, questions to wrestle with, and a challenge that goes along with this sermon cast. If this has been a helpful resource to help you grow in your faith, we want to invite you to support our ministry here at Mid-City Church by giving today. To give, text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to the number 225-307-0662. Thanks, and see you next week.